Right.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Board of Finance for the town of Somers this August 6, 2024. Note for the record that this is a meeting in lieu of the meeting that was regularly scheduled for July, the fourth week in July, when it appeared that we would not have a quorum. Tonight we have all 6 members present: Paul Hart, Bruce Devlin, Joe Talisano, Kathy Devlin, Bill Salka, I'm sorry, apologize, and Mike Parker. At least I didn't call you Putin, or, I didn't do any of those kinds of things. I'm sorry, I apologize. I understand that the Board of Education will not be present tonight, so the next item on our list is from the Board of Selectmen, Tim Keeney.
Good evening, members of the board. Good to see everybody here tonight. The only real item I have to talk about is an old item we've talked about many times, which is the Stafford Advanced Life Support paramedic program that Somers provides, ambulance intercept service for Stafford. And as you well know, Stafford has no ALS capacity themselves. Under a so-called mutual aid agreement, it's still questionable whether it really is a mutual aid agreement. We work through the Tolland Dispatch Center. People call 911, and there's a call list that Tolland uses the dispatch center in order to determine the priority of who to call first. Current call list was Trinity Healthcare is the first call, and they're very proud of themselves taking 30% of the calls. Pat themselves on the back, what a great job they're doing. Somers is second on the list. Rockville ASR is the next, ambulance service of Rockville, and ambulance service of Manchester is fourth on the list. And Somers has been providing service for 5 years now. Let's see. There also has been in the past a bundle billing agreement, which means that Medicaid patients who are attended to, you can only bill one ambulance service. So the bundle bill is a way for Somers to get paid for responding to a Medicaid patient when Stafford Ambulance was the primary receiver of the funds. And the call volume has been approximately 350 calls per year. The expense, we had a meeting on the 27th of June with Stafford First Selectman and Bill Morrison and their ambulance chief, Alex Moore, Stafford Ambulance chief. They actually offered before the meeting not even to have the meeting. They said, "Why do we need this meeting?" I said, "Well, we need to talk face to face about this issue. It's a pretty important issue." And so, anyways, they came into the meeting, and they literally had kept the exact same position they had 4 weeks before. And we had gone out of our way to explain the costs to the town of Somers, the fact that what they're offering us is we're losing $87,000 a year, which we told them was unacceptable, and that we offered as an alternative a program which we would spend somewhere around $35,000 a year. We still lose money, but we're not trying to recoup everything. And they basically wouldn't budge. They wouldn't give us another nickel. They said, "We have no money." I said, "Okay, great. Well, there's no need to talk any further." So we told them that we would we would bill the patients directly. So anytime our ALS ambulance intercept responds to a call in Stafford, we'll bill the patient directly, and if it's a Medicaid call, we'll let Stafford do the initial bill, but then we'll bill whatever's left over. So and what was really interesting was they responded at that time. I said, well, we just have to lower you on the call list. So we'll just make you go from making number 4 rather than number 2. And we had Matt Atwood there, who asked to be there personally because he's the lead ALS paramedic. He needs to see what we're facing in dealing with Stafford. And he was pretty surprised at the position they took. So they basically said, hey, we'll just lower it on the list. And Matt said, yeah, it's not going to make any difference. You know, the other, Rockville and Manchester will just say, hey, we're not available. And so they'll end up calling Summers anyways. So last Friday, the Office of Emergency Management, OEMS, called Stafford and said, you cannot lower Summers on the call list because our policy, and that's the state policy, is that you've got to go with those that are closest. And you can't jeopardize the health of the person receiving assistance just because the town is further down the call list. So it's ironic. So we're in the exact same position we have been in up until now, except for the fact that we're billing patients directly. It's right between $1,000 and $1,200 a call. So it all comes down to what the collection rate is going to be like, and Brian can talk about that. We've had no experience with this, of course, because we haven't done it before, and we have tried not to do it because patients get upset, but they can call Town Hall in Stafford rather than Town Hall in Summers. So Brian, you want to talk about the collection rate?
Yeah, so the collection rate is anticipated to be about the same collection rate that we have for private insurance. The way that the system will work is we would bill if any patient has an insurance provider, we would bill the patient. They submit the bill to their insurance company. Their insurance company will pay us. If there's any difference, if there's an agreed upon rate, some insurance carriers have an agreed upon rate that they will pay. Any differential that's left will be billed directly to the patient. Right now, we have about a 75 to 80% collection rate on those differentials as is. So we anticipate it to continue to be about the same. The difference maker will be the Medicaid patients. Obviously, they have Medicaid. They're probably not the most well off. So the collecting from them will be more difficult. However, they'll be able to utilize services and so forth with Department of Social Services to assist in paying their bills if they should need them. I anticipate that being where our biggest jump in revenue is, as currently we were only collecting $150 for those calls. Being able to bill those between $1,000 and $1,200 per call will obviously jump those revenue numbers up. And again, even if we only collect 75% of $1,000 is more than $150 a call. So we should see some increased revenues from that.
Good. What's interesting is that this is all based on availability. If Summers has available paramedics, I think our paramedic count right now is down 2 people, I believe.
3 if you count the chief.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear clearly what you said, that the Office of Emergency Management told Stafford on Friday.
Yeah, told them that they're not allowed. They're not allowed to shift Summers to a lower position on the call list just because they want to do that. The call list is based on who can provide the service quickest to the patient.
So how did
If you want the email that they
the state agency, obviously Stafford must have.
Oh, yeah, they tried to, they got a call, I think maybe out of the Department of Health or somebody. They did and said, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure who contacted whom, but they received an email from OEMS that says the decision to reverse the changes to the paramedic list was made because we were notified that we could be held liable for delaying patient care and would be reported to OEMS. OEMS is currently investigating this issue. It is important to establish whether we must call the closest available paramedic and whether we can be reported for delaying patient care and putting patients at risk.
And what's the consequence for that? We get sued by a patient?
We don't get sued.
We don't, Stafford.
Stafford gets sued.
I thought we, Tim, I thought we concluded based on the advice of counsel some time ago that we had no obligation to provide service to Stafford.
Well, that's not true.
Well, I think that is true to the extent that if you're not staffed, you don't have to.
Yeah, if you got people, you gotta send them.
So they call you and you do what Trinity does and say, I'm sorry, we're unavailable.
Well, why don't
Put
we
one
just
person on.
say we're not staffed at the level?
That's,
I mean,
that's true.
Basically,
That's really obvious.
basically, we're misappropriating taxpayers' money, to the town of Stafford. Because they refused to raise their mill rate and create an ALS level ambulance. The government of Summers is using its appropriated money to support a non-tax-paying entity.
You're absolutely correct.
So we should just make a directive that either we cut the number of paramedics or we direct that we are not available to service subordinate towns, unless, it's a 6-car pileup or, I'm sure when that call comes in, it's 3 cars, an ambulance, and a goat are in trouble and you need to send someone. But every mom and pop, this is a several $100,000 hole we're in. Because
Well, I
these
say,
guys-
we estimate 87,000.
Well, that's this year.
Per year for
Yeah,
5 years.
that's-
Sure. Right.
I've never been comfortable with those numbers because I don't think those numbers include the extra salaries for the additional medical people that we need to have on staff.
I talked to Brian about that. He did all the research.
So
And
it
he's
does.
the one, Brian, and I'm not trying to stick your finger in the grinder, but you're the one who said you thought about 3 extra people were on staff because we had to service Stafford.
Correct.
And maybe we've attrited those 3 people today, I don't know. But if we have attrited those people, then we don't have the people, as Joe says, to cover Stafford. And we should say so.
Well, it's up to the fire department to make that decision.
Well, the fire department
You're
works for the
the
government.
executive.
And we're the
If
government.
they've got personnel on board, they need to respond. If they're available. Now, the question is, if Summers wants to keep a paramedic in town 24/7, we can do that to make sure we're covered.
Yeah, the key is what we have submitted to the state, 7 years ago when we applied for this program, and then 5 years ago when we went live with this program, is that the town of Summers would be covered 24/7. So if we only have one medic on at a time, then we are not available for anyone other than Summers. The problem is when we start staffing 2 and 3 at a time per shift is when we become available.
There has to be enough data to find the sweet spot on the staff
Correct.
to eliminate this hemorrhaging.
And we have 5 years of
Funds.
data at this point. We should be able to look at those metrics, look at calls, understand when the peak hours of calls are, and be able to staff properly for
And
that.
if it is a major event in town of Summers, you can get additional support fairly quickly. These
Right.
guys are dedicated professionals. They will come when called at 2:30 in the morning, even if they're not on the shift.
Yep.
That's their lifeblood. That's
Yep.
what they do.
And quite frankly, I would rather have a smaller organization of medics supporting Summers and be able to pay them more so that we don't have the high turnover.
Right.
I would rather deal with our folks in our town with our taxpayers' money than have this hole in the system. It just isn't right, Tim.
I agree.
And we've got to I would call OES and get them in here and let them sit before this panel and the selectmen have a joint meeting and say, come on, there's absolutely no way this system was designed to screw a neighboring town.
Yep.
To the tune that it's happening here.
Yep. No, I agree 100% with
It's not
everything.
a
you
bad
said.
idea, actually.
I mean, come on, it can't just be happening in our neck of the woods.
Yep.
It has to be happening in rural towns across.
Oh, absolutely.
Connecticut.
But I like your idea of examining the data we have and figuring out when we're most likely going to need more than one person on.
Yep.
And maybe having mini shifts to cover certain all holidays or for whatever reason,
Yep.
big emergency events.
Yep.
But I also don't want to walk the razor's edge and screw people in summers either.
Absolutely.
Well, there's no intent to do that.
Oh, I know, but I mean,
I
we
don't
have
think
to,
anybody on this board thinks that we want to.
no, but I'm
the
saying I
people
don't want
in
to
summers
walk
at
it so
risk.
close. I want to make, and if we have only one medic on staff, Tim, and we get a call, do we have to send them or we can say, no, we need to keep them?
No, we keep that.
No, we
Okay.
can keep them here. Then we're not, we have the ability to say we're not available.
mean,
If
you
we
can't-
have 2 or 3 on,
If you have,
Harder.
the right thing to do is to say, yes, we're available, because somebody's having a heart attack or something, you know,
Yeah.
and their life could be saved. Is it going to cost us, $700 to go over the hill and do it? Probably.
And
You know,
that kind
you're
of
putting a value on a
reaction-
life.
That kind of reaction is, in my view, fine.
Right.
That's okay. It's the constant 350 calls.
Right.
Where we're supporting that town, when
Right.
that town could have its own system in place.
When-
it should be
when the town-
35 calls a year.
Right, when
not
the town
300.
of Summers only does internally, 700 to 740 calls a year, and we're doing 350 to a neighboring town, I mean, and they're 50%, they're a 50%
Right.
equal of
So
us.
350 was us responding on site, not the total
Exactly.
volume.
Right, no, 350 was just going to Stafford. We did
Just
about,
to Stafford.
we did a little over 700 in the town of Summers. We did about 250 to 300 at the prison alone.
Yeah, but there's an agreement with that.
Right, we get, I mean,
you
the
can see it
prison,
in
the
the,
prison
pie
pays,
chart.
right, the prison pays, it's a Medicare rate, but they they pay, the town of Summers for our service.
Isn't the Medicare rate less than our cost?
It is less than our cost.
Sometimes
The opposite
Medicare
of that is,
supplemental.
right, the opposite is we get, it may or may not have been designed to go that way, but we get, other state aid such as the pilot and so forth for that prison. If you take a 20% loss on the calls to the prison, again, you're doing a service and you're at least getting paid 80% of it. We're doing a service, and last year alone, we would have lost somewhere around 105 to 115,000 had we not been compensated with the intercept agreement that we had with Stafford.
Do you know the percentage of Medicare calls that went to Stafford?
Their Medicaid calls are about 50% of their call volume, so it's about 100.
Is it Medicare?
Medicare, no, because those don't get separated out. Medicaid gets separated out, and it was about 50% of their call volume. So it was
So of the 350, 50% were Medicaid.
correct.
And that's probably why.
And those are the ones that
respond.
we, and those are the ones we only got paid $150
And that's
regardless.
probably why Trinity won't respond. I mean, they don't
100%.
know at the time, but
Right.
after.
Right, they don't know, but again, you
After
follow the
time, you know
data.
that address is a Medicaid.
And you find, and you follow the data and you start realizing 50% of my call volume, I'm only going to get paid
So you're getting an
$150.
80% return, but you're 50% of that 80% is going to be Medicaid.
Right.
So that doesn't solve the problem. The only way to solve this problem is to reduce the staff per shift. Not lay anyone off, maybe to the chairman's point, pay them more, give them shift differential. I'm sure the agreement has that, but have a guy on the bubble that you pay a private, separate stipend. Should we have a major event in town?
We only have this problem with Stafford. We don't have the same issue with Ellington or East Windsor.
We service other towns. Ellington is starting to see an increase in numbers. In the last 6 months of data, Ellington was about 80 calls in 6 months. Stafford was 2.5 times that. I think there were 165, 170 calls. So we are seeing an increase with Ellington, but they're the only other ones. I mean, Tolland, I think, was like 9 calls. East Windsor was about 4. So it's really Infield, I think we had 2. And we do have a true mutual aid agreement with them where, I mean, they come here, we go there, because they do have the same paramedic
So
system.
they have the system in place to take
Right.
care of
Oh,
their
yeah.
own people.
Right,
They've done what Stafford declined.
Should have done 5 years ago.
right.
And Ellington doesn't have an ALS?
Ellington's number one priority coverage is from Rockville Medic, American AMR, out of Rockville Hospital. They cover the majority of their calls, but when they don't, when they can't respond, then we do. And that's why, when Tim was saying about the meeting with Stafford and Matt Atwood was there, he said, AMR is not going to respond to Stafford because they're covering Ellington. And they're covering Vernon. And once they pull out of that to go to Stafford, now they have nobody there. And now your call volume is just going to shift from Stafford to Ellington instead of being there because you're backfilling AMR in Ellington and Vernon. And then ASM's not coming from Manchester to take them 30 minutes to get to a patient in Stafford.
So how many medics do we have per shift on it?
Right now, I'm not sure. We have, as far as I know, we have 4, I believe, full-timers, maybe 5 full-time guys, and I think we have 2 part-time guys.
So they're working.
They work 24 hours on, 72 off.
There's no contractual agreement on number of staff per shift.
Nope, there's nothing in the union contract about minimum staffing.
So it does come down to the selectmen making a
Patricia.
direction.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like, yeah.
We've got the numbers down now. I mean, we're down at 2 or 3 paramedics right now.
And so this 4 to 5 and 2 part-timers are what we currently have?
I believe that's what we currently have staffed, yes.
And so beforehand, we would have had between 7 and 8?
Before, we had 7 full-timers, and we had 2 part-timers at the time. We had 9 paramedics at one point, including the fire chief. Fire chief made 9.
So you work one day, you get 3 off,
Correct.
and you work a 24-hour shift.
Yep.
Are they dual rolled, some of these EMTs?
All of them are dual. They're all firefighter trained, and then they're either an
So then it makes
EMT
that
or a
problem much
paramedic.
simpler if they're dual rolled.
Yep, they're either
You just have to write a directive that says you'll have 1 on shift.
Yep.
And everyone else floats over to the fire apparatus. Well, thank God they're all dual rolled.
Yeah, everyone is firefighter trained, and then they're either, I think there's a handful of part-timers that are only firefighters, but the majority of the department is a firefighter EMT or a firefighter paramedic.
Where's the new chief on this issue? I haven't seen you.
He's still sort of feeling his way, but he's very, very easy to work with, and he's learning what the situation is. He's the one that called me last Friday and gave me the word that, oh, by the way, OEMS says that Stafford can't do what they want to do, which was reverse the order of call on the call list at Tolland Dispatch.
Well, like I said, it'd be nice to have a meeting with those individuals.
Yep.
Are spending our town taxpayer money. So,
We shouldn't be subsidizing, but it does kind of bother me that people are going to die because of this.
no.
But it's not our fault.
Nobody's going to die if Stafford does what they're supposed to do. And
They're not
nobody's going to
gonna.
die if we're called upon because there's somebody in trouble, we'll go. But I don't think that we need to be in a position of having signed up to go. We
I
can tell them we
totally
don't
agree.
have the capacity to go.
I totally agree. I just think I don't see Stafford moving. They had 3 budget fails last year.
They haven't moved for 5 years.
Yeah, Bruce is absolutely right. I mean, Stafford's not interested at all in building their own ALS system.
Then the voters, the citizens who pay this bill own the results, not us through guilt.
You're
They
right.
own the results.
They do.
If they fail to pay, they shouldn't get the service that this town is paying for.
I don't disagree at all.
So if people die, then maybe attitudes will change and they'll vote differently. It's just that, I'm sorry, but it's that simple.
It is.
I mean, if you add all this up, it's got to be close to over 3 or 4 years to $500,000, easily.
Oh, absolutely.
Easily.
It's way over that if you add in the salaries.
Well, the biggest component that we have kind of left out of the calculations has been the capital cost. I mean, when we first started our ALS program in 2019, when we went live, we had bought, a $100,000 fly car and fully stocked it. Since then, we bought a new ambulance and have had to stock it appropriately. These are things that over the course of 5 years of paying for these, we were going to buy the ambulance anyway. But if Stafford were to go live with an ALS program, they have to buy this stuff, and that's
We
the
would have
biggest
bought
chunk
the
of
ambulance
cost.
and we would have been able to deactivate an older ambulance.
Right, we wouldn't have needed 3 ambulances like we're sitting on. We wouldn't have needed 3 fly cars like we've been using because, to your point, yes, do I think at some point we did beef up not only our staffing but our actual equipment to be able to handle the call volume that was going to Stafford as well, because we were picking up 300 to 400 calls a year, and we couldn't do it with just the 2 buses and SUVs that we had in town. We needed more equipment.
And then we put another 50,000 miles per vehicle.
Right.
By driving 20 minutes.
Yep.
So the solution to me is very clear.
It is.
Any interest in them trying to get their own paramedic?
They can't afford it.
They
That's
can't
what he was
afford
just
it.
They
saying.
can't afford it. I mean,
They
they're
can afford it.
they're
They
There's
have
no
upstart.
interest in going down that route.
They're,
They
they're,
choose not to afford it.
None.
their upstart alone would be close to $1 million, and then their pay rates would go up, 15%.
Well,
can't
they all
afford it.
got a ton of COVID money.
Yep.
Where'd they spend it? I mean, that's their decision. They have made all conscious decisions that have placed them in this predicament.
You're right.
And to me, the solution is very clear, Mr. First Selectman.
I heard you.
Yep. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
That horse is dead.
Tim, anything going on with the mill at the moment? Or probably not.
Actually, maybe Bill, Mike can talk about that because he wrote the last communication.
We are, let me gather my thoughts here because I've been in more things. So before Wynn will apply for their round of funding, which we initially thought was going to be in January of 2025, we need to have a affordable housing plan in place. So we began that effort, and it's not a small effort. It's going to take about 8 weeks to complete it. So that's, we have a committee that's doing that and a consultant. There will be public hearing on that, information sessions, and then the zoning will vote on that. And when that is in place, it'll be filed with the State Department of Housing. We're looking at October maybe sometime that would be done, maybe the end of October.
Okay.
The summer has really kind of slowed that process down because people aren't available because of vacations. The other thing that they were, I can't remember the other thing we were looking at. We,
State Bond Commission.
yes, we're also waiting to hear from the State Bond Commission. No, that's on the.
It's going to be in October, this next round,
Yeah.
next meeting.
We're waiting to hear from Wynn to organize this project in a more finite project way. We've been finding information out from them and being surprised by what they're telling us.
Sporadically, we're looking for a plan that will tell us
We
how
thought
this is gonna happen.
we thought that they were going in, the last information that we had, in January 25. Tim got an email 2 weeks ago that said, we're looking at January 26. Because there's maybe not going to be enough of funding in this next round, and we don't think the town is going to be ready. And the other item was, we think that you have zoning time constraints, and we don't. They're making assumptions without consulting us about how long things are going to take to get done. So we reached out to them and said, hey, look, you need to put together a project plan with a project manager. Let's define all of our deliverables, put together a timeline, let us know when we need to get that done. I sent a letter to them asking for all that. I received a phone call from the senior VP. I was not in the office when that happened. I called him back. We're playing phone tag, so we have not talked about that yet. I'm assuming that they're going to agree to doing that. It's just that the thing's not moving along as fast as we thought it was going to move along. Also, the size of the project is going to be smaller than what we thought. Initially, we thought it was going to be 80. Then on a phone call with the Department of Housing, they say 79. I go, whoa, okay, 79. Then we get an email from them that says
64.
64. And the footprint is going to look different.
Well, that's Plan B, they're saying this.
It's not going to be looking at the river, it's going to be looking at Maple Street, because we don't have enough room for parking. Because they were planning the initial building at one parking space per, and I guess Department of Housing said you have to go with the town's zoning requirement on this, and it's 1.5 per in the town. So now, in order to get enough of parking spaces, they have to make the buildings. So, in the meantime, we have that $995,000 from PECD available to us to complete any remediation that has to be done on the site. And that 995 counts as part of their finance capital stack when they go to apply. But I wrote them a memo saying, do you think DEEP is going to promise this out to 2026? Have you cleared that with them yet? And I haven't got an answer from them on that. Because
Sounds like
the
they
promise
got
that
cold
was
feet.
made to us was 2025.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, did we bid to get these guys, or are they just part of a process that, how did we end up with Win?
They're really
we've had 2 or 3 meetings now, phone meetings with the 3 of us, Todd Rowland, all of Win, and then State Department of Housing, State DECD, CHFA, everybody's talking, so everybody knows about the project. They know that something's going to come to them down. They're telling us what they'd be looking for. They're telling us what will give them a favorable score with other kind. I mean, they're basically begging the town of Somerset to do something because they really want to see that kind of a project in this kind of a town. So the wind has slowed down, and I'm not sure why.
Are there other wins out there?
Now, they're the best. They're the one that they're doing the most in the state
We
right now.
believe that if it doesn't work with Wayne, it's not going to work with anybody.
Right.
Okay.
So, I guess I'm of the mindset, I mean, I was very disappointed at first, but I guess I'm of the mindset, as long as we do something and get something in there, then I'm happy. And if it has to be a year in order to position themselves more favorably for financing, okay, then that has to be the case. It's not like it has to be done by a certain date. So, that's the update on that.
Thank you.
Brian, do you have something else?
So the first page in your packet is the monthly report based on the resolution that was passed by the Board of Finance in May. So this is the town side first report for the month of July. Each month, I will just update this. As you can see right now, there's no budget adjustments. None have been made at this time, so the revised and the approved budget are the same. And then we have our expenditures and the amount remaining in categories. I grouped these by the same categories that we file at the state level with. So general government, public safety, public works, library, rec and leisure, social services, and miscellaneous. And then that way you can see the same report that we would basically send the state. I do not have one for the Board of Ed to deliver to you, but I have this one to give you from the town side.
Did the Board of Ed put one online?
I did not see one. They don't have is it July? I don't think they had a regular July meeting. I think they take the month of July off, or they have just one meeting at the beginning of the month. So I haven't seen one yet.
I thought during the discussion on all of this, the Board of Ed said readily available. They had it readily available online every month.
I can check online, and if I see one, I'll email it to you guys. And then page 2 is just a pie chart of the breakdown of the $11 million in state aid that the town received in fiscal year 24. The education grant in red is the ECS funding that the town receives. The green represents all grants that the town government received as far as Pequot, pilot, LOSIP dollars that we applied for, town aid road. Not all of those dollars go into the general fund. Some of those are special projects for capital or special revenue funds. The orange piece of the pie represents other education grants that were received that are not part of the general fund dollars and are not part of their annual year budget. And then the sliver in yellow is what we received from the Department of Corrections for our ambulance trips to the prison.
And that covers what percentage of the cost, roughly?
If I had to throw an arrow, I'd say about 75 to 80%.
Thank you.
Is the pilot money baked into one of these other things?
Pilot money's in the green section.
Okay.
1.4 million.
It's a good trade-off.
Anything else?
Nope.
You have on here the resolution authorizing an appropriation. Who will give us the facts on? I know you've got a detailed
Yep. So I got a
attachment.
Yep, I got a plan here on July 3rd. The Board of Selectmen adopted a 5-year road resurfacing plan to begin in 2025. Between Todd Rowland and myself, we worked out a plan, spacing it out over 5 years to resurface just over 20 miles of roadway in town. This also includes Board of Education parking lots, as they came to CIP and requested to pave the parking lots. It was denied at the time for multiple reasons. One of them is just the sheer cost of doing it without bonding for it is kind of expensive. And so we figured since they are in the midst of an HVAC project, it would be best to delay that until after HVAC is completed, to remove all heavy equipment so it's not driving over fresh pavement and ruining it. But so then we did work it into the 5-year plan as part of that. The plan is developed to each November. A resolution would fall on the whichever election ballot is happening that year. Anywhere from the current year, which is $2 million, down to $1 million, to seek funding for the following May, to begin road paving for the group of roads that were selected for that year. The current resolution timeline, July 25th, Board of Selectmen passed their resolution and provisionally set a town meeting date. Tonight, August 6th, the Board of Finance is receiving their resolution. After tonight, the town can send out an informational mailer to all residents in town. A draft has already been submitted to the Board of Selectmen and approved. By September 20th, the town clerk must submit the referendum question to the Secretary of State so that it appears on the ballot. On October 3rd, the town clerk would publish the notice of town meeting in the JI. October 4th, the town clerk would prepare the absentee ballots. On October 8th, we would have the special town meeting where the question would be discussed and the meeting would be adjourned to referendum. And then beginning on October 21st, early voting for that election begins. And the question would be on the early voting ballots, and they would have those 14 days leading up to November 5th, which is actual referendum date to vote on the question. Looking at the potential tax impact over the course of the next 5 years, funding for these roads would cost the town approximately 0.28 mils over the course of 5 years. That's spread, that's not each year, that's compounded, versus the old way where we budgeted whatever the ebbs and flows were in the general fund budget would have cost us a $0.5 mil alone just in 2027. So it shows the usage of the debt service fund and how we curb our debts by using that system. This does.
Out of curiosity, how does the fund save us 22 points?
So various other revenue sources are allowed to hit a debt service fund that aren't allowed to hit a general fund. For example, your premiums from receiving a bond, you can't just put that in the general fund because they have to be spent on specific items.
Okay.
So by having it in the fund and allowing it to accrue interest and so forth allows it to build its own revenue source to help pay for debt as well. Holding on to funds rather than them ending up in the general fund that lapses annually and just going back to fund balance, by having it in a non-lapsing fund, as we transfer dollars in budgetarily to pay for the actual debt service during the year, anything remaining at the end of the year gets to stay in that fund and be used for future years, whereas if we continued to do it in the general fund, it would just end up back in the fund balance and have to be reappropriated annually to offset those costs.
Would each year require a new bond?
So yes and no. So we can go that route. The plan was to go that route originally. That way we could spread it out. The plan was a 10-year bond for each one of the groupings. Keeps the interest rate down and keeps the principal down by keeping it at $1 million. Let's say if over 10 years you're paying $100,000 of principal a year with a low interest rate. Depending on what interest rates are, just because you pass a resolution doesn't mean you have to. You can only bond that amount. So if we pass $2 million at referendum in November, in May we look at the interest rates and they're not quite where we want them to be, we can roll a band. In November we pass another resolution for $1 million the following year.
Okay.
Interest rates have gone down, we can combine two resolutions into one bond issuance for $3 million for 10 years at a lower interest rate. Okay. So it's really strategizing with what the market is doing at the time. Just because the resolution says we're going to spend $2 million on roads doesn't mean that's the only thing. We can combine multiple resolutions in one issuance. So it allows us to kind of watch the market and see what it's doing.
Okay. And our prior method was?
Our prior method, same system. We went to a resolution, we passed a resolution, but we were budgeting the actual expense annually in the general fund. And if you look at, and I could send you the spreadsheet, if you look at our debt service, it fluctuates year to year based on what the interest and principals are for the different issuances at that time. So they fluctuate up and down, especially when you issue new debt, because you may defer the principal for 1 year, so you see a slight tick from you're paying the interest in the first year, and then you see the principal jump up, but then other debt falls off, and so you end up with this roller coaster ride in the general fund of what the actual expense is versus budgeting a smoothing number that allows you to hedge funds today at a cheaper price and spend them in the future to keep the mill rate low.
You may remember that last year we approved this.
Yep.
bond.
Oh, I do remember that.
Debt
Yeah.
service.
I do remember that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
At
Try
their
to smooth it.
suggestion that this would even out the flow of debt service overall. And we voted to approve it on the idea, let's see if it works, let's see if it helps out.
Yep.
So I think that's where we are. My question is, and let me say this, I met with Sam Galloway, I don't know, it's now 6 weeks ago, and I asked him to come up with the number that he expected that it would cost to finish the HVAC system for the schools, because we're only doing one building at the moment. We've
Yep.
still got two others that we need to worry about.
Yep.
And my question, I guess, I asked him to bring those numbers tonight for your review. He's not here. But based on the earlier numbers that we had, when we were talking about doing the whole system, the balance of the work has got to be on the order of magnitude of $8 to $10 million, somewhere in that range, maybe even higher. I don't know.
For the remaining two schools?
Yeah.
I would double that.
So my question to you is, have you, in thinking about the debt service for the roads, have you thought about the fact that we need to finish the job in the schools?
Absolutely. So the thought is, right now, the elementary school is going to take, we haven't even gone out to bid for construction yet on the elementary school. So we're approximately 6 months behind schedule at this point. Assuming we get out to bid in October, which is the deadline, or which is the goal right now, we would probably be looking at starting construction January, February. So you're looking at potentially, summer of 27? It would be wrapped and fully completed and done. It's about a 24-month project. And then you assume some delays and so forth in there. So we're I would say summer of 27, the project is complete at the elementary school. At that time, we've already, paved 16 miles of the 24 miles of road in town, and we only have a small portion to go. And that's when we would be looking at, okay, what is the middle school going to cost? What needs to actually be done at the high school, and what would be realistic costs there? Based on what I have learned about HVAC, the original numbers that we were given were extremely conservative. That the quote, or the work that CES did for us is now about 2 years old and is about 30% less than what the anticipated actual cost is.
There's no need for us to wait until 2027 to start the plan.
Strategically,
for those other buildings, is it?
strategically, there is almost no way we could do multiple schools at one time. The thought is they may even have to move kids around so that they can, work in the elementary school. And if they don't have the space there, they may have to, move a fourth grade class to the middle school or something.
And I understand that the potential is to use rooms in the other schools as alternative space.
Yep.
But there's no real need to wait until 2027 to plan to do this.
No, there's no reason to wait till then. The trick with the resolution is from the date that it's passed at referendum, you only have 36 months to move forward from it. So if you passed a resolution, this November for the middle school, and you couldn't begin the project by today in 2027, your resolution's dead, and you have to start all over again. And trying to actually plan multiple schools at the same time is almost
So
impossible.
they don't have the capacity to do
No.
even the planning portion of it while they're managing a number
It's
of.
convergence. It would be really high-level convergence, yeah. And the one thing that we've learned from the initial estimate is that when you bring in somebody who's a construction manager, who's ready to put something like this out to bid, and you ask them, how about refreshing this estimate to make sure that we're in the ballpark? And it comes in at a lot different than what we thought. So, if there are issues, you know.
Yeah, I know. When
Well, you can plan for 2027, you're just going to have to refresh it and do it again.
I know whenever the next school is beginning, whatever the number is that they say, this is our estimated cost, I'm going to add $3 million to whatever they tell me.
But all of that is part of the problem. All part of that is all part of the work that you have to do to figure out how to get this off the ground.
Yep.
But COVID is 2021, and now we're talking about not being able to have our schools air conditioning.
So the other
Not
schools-
air conditioning, but
Well,
the
so-
condition of the air
You're
until
talking about air
sometime.
quality.
I'm sorry?
Absolutely. You're talking about the air quality, absolutely.
Right.
And the initial state standards they were coming out with, they were saying it was going to be 2024, now it's 2030.
I understand that, but
And so they understand what everybody is faced with, because every single school in the state is competing for every one of those construction and all the dollars, and it's creating inflation for the need of everything that you want to put in there, the demand. So it's just not that easy, just to say, hey, let's go and
And the elementary school was the priority because they did not have any airflow
We know
whatsoever,
this.
no ventilation.
the concern and the question that I have is that it's going to appear to take us 10 years from the time that we suffer this major pandemic to getting the air quality even.
one school.
What?
In just one
In
school.
just one school.
You're absolutely right.
True. However, I would have you ask the superintendent about the air quality that are in the other two schools,
Yeah.
because those two aren't as bad as the one that's being worked on now. I would say
Understood. That's
that
what,
they're-
that's why we went
That-
with
that's
the
true.
elementary school first,
Yeah.
because they weren't as bad.
Right.
But as Joe points out, we're going to be 10 years to get the air quality in the elementary
Right.
school.
And
Up
he's
to
going to
standard.
be, I mean, I have no problem with you doing all this. The issue is money, and appropriating that kind of money for another one of these estimates is going to be a challenge.
Is he planning on, are they planning on doing and requesting this to the state like Ellington did? To get
We've already
Well,
requested the
they-
state for this school.
Right, for future schools, they would as well, but
But you can't
need
until
a-
you've passed a
but you need a resolution first, and if you pass a resolution now, it's dead,
Voted on by the town.
because we don't have the capacity to.
So two interim steps. We did talk to the superintendent about, what is the air quality in the other two schools?
Yep.
That would be a piece of data that would be helpful.
Yep.
The second one would be, Dr. Saul could talk about at the university, we used to use short-term solutions, these, outside units, just to
Yep.
provide some relief from, oppressive heat. We could do that as an interim step if the air
You're not
quality
the
is
only one
good.
thinking that way.
Yep. No, we have already proposed.
You're not
that
the
as well.
only one that is
So
thinking that way.
we need the Board of Ed to, engage.
The middle school is the easiest because all of the system is on the roof, and all that needs to be replaced there is the air handlers. So they don't have to do a ton of work inside the school itself. The elementary school is challenging because of its age. It wasn't built during the days of HVAC, and so trying to map a system into a ceiling that's only 3 inches thick versus, today's 10-inch thick ceilings is different. The high school is fortunate in the sense that most of the school already has air. It just needs to be upgraded.
So maybe the interim step is if it's just an air handler replacement, that's a crane and,
Right.
and, $1 million.
Probably about 4.
Well,
But yes, you're absolutely
but
right.
that's a summer project.
It could be a one summer project.
And now, I'm talking at 50,000 feet, which gets me in trouble a lot, because not a lot of oxygen up there, but it seems something that you could slide into this
Which is why,
2027.
which is why it was the lowest priority, because it's the easiest to take care of.
I'd like to propose to the Board of Finance that we follow up with Joe's suggestion
Right.
and see if we can't, and if it means another meeting before the September deadline so that we don't hold anything up, I'm willing to do that. But I would propose that we ask Dr. Galloway and Stephanie or whoever's dealing from the Board of Ed side to give us some numbers on even the temporary fix, if not the permanent fix for the other building, and maybe we can roll this into one bonding issue.
You can't, because it has to be done within 3 years. You're talking about when you want to.
Talking to middle school,
Right.
When?
the middle school, which is.
When do you want that vote to take
You
place?
could start it in 26.
In 26?
Yeah,
That's
that's
what-
within 3 years.
That's fine. I'm sorry, I was.
No, it's fine.
I was
It's okay.
assuming it was going to be earlier than that.
I don't think they'll be able to do it personally, but I'd like to hear that from them.
I'd like to, yeah, I think Joe's right on target. I'd like to hear that from them.
I think you should question them about everything. I agree.
I mean, if they need more capacity, you can bond for more capacity. You can bond for management, not anymore.
No, you absolutely can.
But they do that all the time in major.
I don't know that,
construction projects.
and don't get me wrong, and miracles have happened before, but if you're saying that, a number including that to plan an entire project, by September, I'd say probably 15th, would probably be like the drop dead. And again, I'd have to ask bond counsel for an absolute date no later than what, I mean, it took.
As long as,
and again, the people
Brian,
that are in
as long
charge.
as we meet, as long as we can meet before what you think the drop dead date is at the moment, so that we can deal with the road issue. If we don't get anything at all from the Board of Ed, then we.
Yeah, I don't see there's any way that they could even begin to put a project together in that time frame.
All we're looking for is an estimate.
They wouldn't have a realistic number. Their number's 2 years old and it's already $4 million out of date.
Well, I think that's the request I would have of the Board of Ed. What's the best we can do? Give us the information, get on it, and let us work it in so that, I mean, I'd like to put the bonding together for the projects. I just don't like us sitting here looking out to 10 years away to be able to get these kids a quality air condition. And I don't just mean
Yeah.
the coolness, I
Yeah.
mean also the quality of the air that they breathe. I feel as though that's an obligation that we should take seriously.
Yeah,
So we're trying to put both in the bond for November.
no.
No, not necessarily, but I'd like to be able to get that number so that they can begin to plan for how that next bond is going
This
to
is not
fit
going to
into
happen
this.
in November if you hold it up, the bond for the road. It's not going to happen, won't go on the ballot.
If we meet before the 15th,
We're telling you that we would could meet in 2 weeks if you could get them.
What would be the benefit? I don't have a microphone, maybe they don't want me to.
No, go ahead.
What would be the benefit of holding up a $2 million bond on the road for an estimate on schools?
Exactly.
The school,
We're not holding it up.
It's not even going to be an increase in the mill rate, and
We're not holding it up. We're asking for the Board
Well,
of
you
Ed.
will be holding it up if you don't vote for it tonight.
That's not true.
that's not true.
Is it not true?
We have until the-
I don't know what the date is, but I know there's deadlines that we have to meet.
He's-
And
We have dates, and it's his thing, so he could tell me to shove it. We have dates from bond council that says, vote on this date, this date, this date. He's done all the computation. He's got it all laid out. If you want to mess with that, go ahead. But this won't be on the ballot if you do.
What we're saying is, we would like to have a conversation with the Board of Ed.
You can.
Let me finish my statement, please, before it screws up his timeline. So if that conversation is next Tuesday,
A $2 million road bond is not gonna screw up.
well, it's not, well, that was one of my questions. It's not 2 million. What's the total project cost?
No, it's only a $2 million project.
Over the course of
He doesn't
5
have to
years,
do-
it's just under 7 million.
Yeah,
That's the number on.
he doesn't have to do next year's if you don't want to.
I heard that 28 minutes ago, so
Right,
I know where I'm at. I just wanted to.
And all I'm saying is the train left the station on this one for the 2 million.
No, the opportunity to understand where the school department is.
Yeah.
If we can have that information before the 15th,
You can vote on this tonight so this can move along. You can hear what the school department has to say, and if you don't want to then vote on it on the ballot, you can pull it at the end.
I don't want to do
So,
it. I wouldn't want to do it that way.
okay,
I'd
well
like
then
to
it's not
have-
gonna happen.
And the,
Well, you guys decide. I can't believe that you're gonna mess up a $2 million bond for a road for an estimate on next Tuesday and have the board, because they're not gonna have anything to say.
No, I mean, Brian, we need some help in communicating with the Board of Ed to see if they're going to be able to come and talk to us about the issue. But when's the drop dead date? I thought you said it was
So
September
I'm
15th.
looking through the timeline, trying to determine if I need a legal opinion to determine it or not, but, and considering the fact that I still have to mail an informational mailer out and so forth, I mean, early September at the absolute latest, because you still have to be able to put together all the documentation to submit the referendum questions, you gotta get the mailers out.
So
Has to
don't
be
we,
on the ballot.
do
And there's
we
also
not have a
road.
regular meeting? We don't have one in August, right?
You do not have a regular meeting in
So if we met at
August.
the end of August with a special meeting, that would give you plenty of time.
Maybe, I'd have to email the attorney to determine.
He doesn't know.
Because I'm not 100%
Why,
sure.
why is it necessary to mess up the timeline on this?
Well, for one thing,
You once said that you don't want to get involved in all the detail of managing the town, that you're here to oversee all this. Well, that's just great, oversee it. But the Board of Selectmen have already approved this resolution to move forward. They're looking for you to agree to that so that it can go to the town meeting.
but is it really fair to say to me that this is the first time I've seen this
Is it?
proposed? Yes. This is the first time. It hasn't been before CIP. It's been presented to us for the first time. I don't think there's anybody here who's seen any of these numbers before tonight.
Didn't you send it out a couple weeks ago, or?
Have you?
We sent it out before the meeting that got canceled,
Right,
which was 10 days ago.
2 weeks ago,
2
yeah.
weeks ago.
Yeah, maybe that would be helpful, then if you responded then and said, I got an issue. But you get stuff for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we come here and.
Well, we wouldn't
you're
have an
gonna
issue
blow
if we
this
had
thing
the
out of
Board
the
of Ed
water.
here tonight.
Why?
Well,
It's a two-way.
We would, I go back and forth and say to you again, that it met with Sam 6 or 7 weeks ago, and on this very topic of what is it gonna cost? What can we do to get the other 2 schools underway?
You're not gonna have any new information.
Well, I think we will if we stand fast. I think somebody will understand how important it is to have that
So it
information.
is important, but you have to have new roads too. You can't do both.
Yeah, and I don't think anything that I'm saying tonight interferes with the new road issue.
We won't have new roads this year.
You will if we meet before the deadline.
This has the deadline. We're in,
But, you know,
it was figured out from election day backwards, what they need things done. And this year, oh my God, there's early voting for 2 weeks also.
That threw us off big time.
Which screws up all the timelines because it has to be on the ballot for the early voting in October. So you have to go back to town clerk, that has to talk to the secretary of the state because it's on the state election and federal election ballot. So, and you go back, there is no extra.
Can we have a
time.
quorum
So you're making
on next Tuesday?
Make a choice.
Can you make it
Don't
next
vote on it
Tuesday?
tonight. It won't happen. I'm telling you.
Can you make
You'll talk to
I'm just missing, I'm just a little confused. I'm trying to figure out what the
I would
question
hear
is with the Board of Ed in this. I'm missing something.
Yeah.
The part that I'm concerned about is trying to move the Board of Ed to come up with the numbers that we need to to understand the bonding for the remaining two schools.
Right.
And there are a number of ways we could go. We could either think about the full-term project, we could think about Joe and what Bill has talked about in terms of putting in temporary units. So there are a number of different ways that they could go. Give us some information, all right?
But I'm just trying to figure out what
Why are they
bearing that has on this right here.
Because I think if we knew what those numbers were, had a sense of those numbers, we could bond for all of it. Or more importantly, we could figure out, even if we don't bond it all in one shot, we can figure out what the next bonding ought to be for the schools.
Yeah.
And how that fits into the overall budget process. When you have numbers that are, and these guys do a good job. I'm not knocking them at all. They're doing the right thing. But when you have numbers that you've just seen for the first time, you can't possibly understand how they all play together. And I'd like to be able to have that understanding. It's that simple. And if, I'm willing to meet next Tuesday, if you can have, if you can.
It's the primary,
What's that?
the
There's a
election.
primary in this room next Tuesday.
What's that?
There's a state
Election.
primary in this room next Tuesday.
Well, we can meet upstairs. There are other places in the building we can meet if we have to.
I am out of town next Tuesday.
I'll be on.
It's your call, Mike, it's your call.
I mean,
I
is
think
this
you're
really gonna blow
complicating,
this?
I think you're complicating something that doesn't need to be complicated, because this is just a portion of the road program. It's $2 million. It won't make a hill of beans of a difference on whatever they're estimating those costs to be. If this bond is a 10-year bond, it'll be half over before you even begin the bond for anything on those new schools. So, you guys can sit here and come up with what you think it's going to be, but it's not going to be that way. So there's a lot more leeway here. Do we have to do the whole 5-year plan? No, maybe after we find out, we say we don't do years 2 through 5. But right now, you've done all this work.
And if I know
You're
anything,
going to pay bond counsel all this money, and you're just going to,
if I know
do it.
if I know anything about the Board of Education too, it's going to take them 6 months to research everything to come up with a
Let me
number.
just ask you, you had the estimate before, and you said it was 30% probably lower than it should have been. And it was an estimate for a lift and replace of that air handler in the middle school.
Allegedly, I haven't seen it, but yes,
And that estimate was $4 million?
was $4
I
million.
would wait for the superintendent to come to you and tell you what the latest estimate is on that middle school, on that elementary school. And then you can start making some decisions of what you want to do and when you want to do it. Because I don't believe the dollars are anywhere near what we originally thought they would be.
For the middle school?
It's not my,
For the
it's not my
elementary
call to make it, because I'm not exactly in command of all the information, and the school is. And so they need to report to you on it. I have no problem with that being done.
So the only two issues for me is it's probably a $6 million lift. And can they do it in the next 36 months?
No, I doubt it. And it's $6 million just for the labor and equipment. That's before you pay the professionals. If there's one thing I've learned on this, there's a lot of professionals involved with these projects. We did $10.5 million. We're paying just $2 million of that to professionals. We're down to $8 million that we can build an HVAC system for in the elementary school. Because we got to pay it, because we got to pay
If you
professionals.
bonded for 11 and you got
10.5.
and you got 6 from the feds,
Right, we got 6.
so you really have 16 to 17 million.
Nope. The resolution was 10.5. I can't
So
spend
you
one
can't go
penny over
beyond
that.
10.5.
I can't spend one penny over that. So $10.5 million is my cap on that. 6 million of it, roughly 5.8, is being paid for by the state, leaving me to have to bond for 4.2 or 4.7. And
You're not going to get anything out of it.
and when push comes to shove, I only have $8 million left to construct the project with, because I got to pay construction managers and project managers and this professional and that professional. And next thing you know, the only people getting paid around here are the professionals, and we're not building anything.
So if we let this go, if we agree, as Joe says, to let it go and just agree to the resolution, what can you do to get push these guys? Push these guys.
Can I have a realistic number in, let's see, this is August. So can I have a realistic number that we are looking at come budget time in January, February, that we can project out debt service for an upcoming resolution this time next year, 100%.
Yeah, but it's got to include all the roads.
Oh, it
because
would.
they are a critical part
All of my
our
projections,
infrastructure.
all of my projections would include everything. The projections that I'm showing here already include my estimated cost for what the elementary school is. And that's what I'm saying, is we're doing these roads and the elementary school, and it's going to cost 0.2 mils over 5 years versus $500,000, $500,000 this year and $250,000 this year and $1/3 this year. I've mapped all this out. Now, throwing in another $6 million, yes, am I going to have to go back and redo all of my projections? 100%. Am I willing to do it? Also, yes, that's what you pay me for. But, yes, everything would be included in it. I would need some hard numbers from the Board of Ed as far as what somebody believes it would cost to construct it.
I think the Board of Ed
Plus
doesn't
that-
think we're serious about funding their needs. I just think they think it's just, lack of a.
Unfortunately, even though everybody has a year, the Board of Ed only has like 9 or 10 months. And they're not around for the month of August.
Well, that's a leadership
Necessarily
issue with
done.
the Board of Ed. That's not my issue.
Yeah.
My issue.
No, but I'm saying,
our-
you want
our issue
information, that's
is to
why you
manage
don't
the
get it.
finances of the town, short and long term.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do if we have no data from our largest expenditure.
Yep.
It's not simple.
You should have them in here, and you should actually.
Well, I've asked for a joint meeting, and I have to get one.
I
They have data from their July expenditures that we.
And I think a realistic study for the middle school to get a pretty firm number that I would feel comfortable going to a resolution with, and including the professionals, because now I understand what the professionals cost for all of it, would take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get a realistic number.
I think anything else is gonna be a dart at a dartboard.
I agree. I mean, there was the elementary school, we gave them, realistically, we gave them 18 months to come up with something for the
We
elementary
spent
school.
$500,000.
And we were this far away.
And so,
That we didn't, that we got.
18 months, and we still couldn't get within the bullseye.
and so then they come up with an estimate, we pay.
$500,000.
Yeah, we spent $600,000 on the first design
So
estimate.
so we say, hey, it's been 2 years.
We're still nowhere near it.
And I'm on the committee, it's been 2 years, is that estimate still good? Well, let's have the construction manager look at this. Well, I can't look at this until I X-ray the ceiling in every one of those classrooms, because this building is 60, 75 years old. And sure enough, Eddie, doesn't seem like it's going to be, so there's all kinds of complications. The first guy that did the estimate didn't do that, now this guy's, so, like he said, these things are just,
Well, they've got to get their act together if they want their students to be, in a and their staff, their faculty, be in a comfortable,
wow.
Clean environment.
I think for
I mean,
us to
we're
get a
sitting
real
there-
number, it's gonna take a lot of money to get a real person in there.
Yeah.
I think anything the Board of Ed is gonna give us is gonna be pulling it, to use a different analogy, dart at the dartboard.
Yep.
So my inclination would be to just go forward with this.
I make a motion to authorize the resolution for an appropriation of $2 million for the road improvement projects and the financing of said appropriation by issuance of general obligation bonds and notes in anticipation of such bonds in the amount not to exceed $2 million.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? None. Hearing none. Next item on the list is,
Yes.
is there any other business, Brian, or anything else?
No, I actually meant to take that off of the agenda because it's a special meeting. We can't do it with business. That was my fault.
And if there's any approval of minutes from, I think, the last item in your package, are the minutes from May 28th.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes from May 28th?
June 25th.
June 25th, yeah. I think you're looking at the minutes from June.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong,
Yeah. I'll clarify the motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 25th, 2024, regular meeting.
Second.
any further discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. It's Joe's turn to shine.
To adjourn.
Second.
Meeting's